Welcome to TSAM Digital. My name is Melissa Macatuno. I'm the Director of Marketing at StarCompliance. And StarCompliance is one of the world's leading providers of compliance software to the global financial industry. We have clients in over 83 countries, and our mission is to make compliance simple and easy by providing technologies and softwares to help automate and simplify the employee conflict of interest space. I have today with me Tim Ward, our Director of Product Strategy and Marketing at StarCompliance, and he's going to be taking us through a little bit more about Star and our recent survey that we did, which was all around COVID-19 and how that's really impacting the compliance space in the finance industry. So Tim, welcome.
Hi, Melissa. Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for joining us today. Can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit more about you and your role at StarCompliance?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tim Ward. I'm the Director of Product Strategy and Marketing here at Star. I've been with the company for 16 years, and I'm responsible for the product management team, and we've really got three particular products. The first one is employee conflicts of interest, and that's helping firms manage possible conflicts of interest between their employees and firm activity, and it includes areas such as personal account dealing, gifts and entertainment, political contributions, outside business activities. We've also got a product called Compliance Control Room, and that helps firms manage compliance and the flow of material and non-public information around large financial transactions, such as mergers and acquisitions, loan offerings, IPOs, etc. And most recently, we've developed and launched a mobile application. So that helps people who are on the move or away from their laptop or desktop computers still fulfill their compliance obligations, as you mentioned, simply and easily, which is our mantra. We're trying to make our software as easy as possible to use for the users and the employees.
Great, thanks. And I think that probably the mobile app came at a perfect time considering the current work environment that we've all been in the last 9 months or so. Earlier this year, Star actually conducted a global survey of what the impacts of COVID-19 has been on compliance. Can you tell us a bit more about that survey, who participated, and kind of just an overview of what the goal of that was?
Yeah, definitely. So the survey went out to compliance teams at firms of all shapes and sizes and different types and different geographies. And we were really pleased because we had over 160 different respondents, and they came from private equity firms, asset managers, stock managers, banks, large diversified institutions, and also from firms that had 200 employees right the way up to 50,000 or 60,000 employees. And like our client base, the responses came in from all parts of the world, North America, throughout Europe, Asia Pacific, covering Australia and Singapore and Hong Kong. So it was really great. We got a really good cross-section of answers. And we were asking things around current challenges for the COVID environment, how people were coping, what they were doing differently, how they were using technology during this period. So yeah, it was kind of a fascinating exercise, and we're really pleased with the response.
What were some of the most interesting findings, do you think, from the survey?
I think there was two really big themes. The first one, that there was a lot of challenge, particularly in the early stages of the pandemic, around handling just general employee requests and incoming information. And that makes sense. There was a lot of increased trading activity during that time, as employees were also managing their own risk in terms of the volatility of the market and their own positions. And so we were seeing, or firms were seeing, increases in trade activity. I'd say over 50% of firms had at least a 3 times increase in trading activity, and some firms were reporting 7 or 8 times increase in trading activity. And so all of that activity resulted in lots of questions coming through to the compliance team, such as, can I sell before a holding period, or can I engage in increased activity over and above a particular policy. And it was a difficult time for compliance teams because they were trying to obviously help their employee base, but they also recognized that they had a real duty for their clients as well, and for the firm's responsibilities. And so generally speaking, we found that firms were sticking and enforcing their existing policies, but it's still taking a lot of incoming requests from their employees and explaining why they were taking the decisions that they were taking, and still enforcing those policies, but still trying to be cooperative and trying to sort of give as much support to employees as possible. And I think as people got used to working in a remote environment, a lot of those questions were coming in unusual channels. They were replacing kind of the in-person conversations and the ad hoc one-on-one conversations. And also employees weren't able to get that direction from their peers or from their friendship groups at work or from their supervisors, etc. So the compliance were really shouldering that burden early on. I think the other challenge that they had was that they were also not able to easily talk one-on-one with each other on an ad hoc basis. And so the first 2 or 3 months definitely found teams working in a different way and trying to establish just a different kind of form of communication. I think the second big theme from the survey was also just keeping connected with the compliance teams in general, just managing the workload, keeping in touch with colleagues. How was that going to work in terms of the structure of the week and the types of communication? And that was particularly prevalent where firms were required to onboard new compliance team members and then onboard the wider kind of employee population.
Mm-hmm. It's easy to deliver those onboarding packets and to really help a new employee understand the code of ethics and the policies around an organization when you're in person. I think you can kind of stress some of those things a little bit better, right? But when you send them a packet in an email and say, hey, read this, and then, if you have any questions, email me, there might be a lot of things that go, kind of fall through the cracks, or that maybe really aren't stressed as much as they would have been stressed in person, because you don't have that one-on-one engagement. I think a lot of our clients said that they really wish they had more of that in-person connectivity when they were onboarding their employees.
I think that's right. I think the very large organizations that have tens of thousands of employees and offices all around the world have quite sophisticated infrastructures for training new employees and getting those messages across. But typically the smaller firms or firms that are concentrated in a particular location, the compliance team and the compliance leaders would be very, very visible within the firm, and they'd be used to meeting new employees on their first day, conducting training all in person, answering questions, and they wouldn't necessarily have some of those other technology backups in place. And so I think we found the challenges probably the most in some of those small to mid-sized firms who just culturally were much more attuned to sort of doing things in person and within the office. But right. I was really impressed around how flexible and adaptable compliance teams were and how quickly they were able to adjust. And as I say, after I'd say 3 to 4 months, most people had found a way of working that kind of suited the compliance team, but also was giving kind of the employees what they were wanting.
Great. So I'd be remiss, we are a software organization. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a little bit about how software is playing a role in kind of the new work from home, the COVID-19 impact, right? I think one of the questions that we asked were how they're managing their compliance programs today. Are they leveraging vendor software like a StarCompliance? Are they still really focused on manual processes? Are they leveraging in-house technology that maybe had been built, 10, 15 years ago to manage their compliance processes? What were some of the findings there in terms of how people are leveraging or not leveraging technology to kind of get them through some of these new challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fairly clear result that firms that either had internal technologies or some sort of centralized compliance system, particularly if that system was already hosted outside of the organization and was available to everybody irrespective of their location, clearly had an easier transition into working remotely and working from home, and also a central point that acted as a communication for the compliance team themselves, even if those individual compliance team members were dispersed. And so there was a clear result that the firms who had that central technology system in place reported that their compliance programs overall were more than 70% likely to be efficient and successful.
Mm-hmm.
Where people did have manual processes, and again, it relates to probably the size of the firm and the fact that manual physical processes are often locked into a particular location. They found it a lot harder, and particularly around gaining approvals and getting wet signatures on request forms and things of that sort was a real challenge in terms of just physically getting printed and exchanging documents and getting signatures. And so what was interesting is that I think the pandemic this year has acted as a catalyst for some of those technology projects that were previously proposed and now have become even more important. And I think firms are planning, contingency planning for this situation to kind of run into next year, either entirely or as some sort of hybrid approach. And so one of the findings that we had, because we expected a lot of the projects to be put on hold, and StarCompliance actually had its one of its busiest years in its history, and it's reflected in the survey that over 62% of firms are going ahead as planned with their compliance technology projects.
Well, you hit on something, it doesn't seem that this is going to dissipate anytime soon. I think we were all hopeful that maybe by this time this year, we would all be back in our offices and working as though everything were back to normal, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And different countries, different cities, even different provinces are kind of deciding on their own terms what is appropriate and what is not in terms of, how they're going to continue to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. So is there any advice that you can provide that would maybe help compliance teams increase their efficiency or effectiveness during this kind of work from home environment?
Yes, I mean, I think the topic of business continuity has obviously been raised and is really important. It's almost like the ultimate stress test over the last few weeks and months. And so firms have been able to make sure that they can operate effectively and efficiently, irrespective of location. I think one of the big learnings, on the positive side, I think lots of firms and teams have seen how they can continue business and how in lots of cases individuals can be and teams can be more productive working from home. And I think now that technology infrastructure is in place, as long as there's a centralized communication and record keeping device, then a number of firms I think are now looking to continue this way of working, even if it's not necessarily mandated by the local environment. I know a number of investment firms have committed to allow their employees to continue to work from home, for the foreseeable future. So I think the legacy of the pandemic for me will be, as I mentioned, although it was fairly typical for very large firms to have a very good technology infrastructure, I now think that this will now apply to all firms, whether there's 20 people, 50 people, 200 people, wherever they're located. The ability for firms to be able to reliably access a system and perform approvals and monitor activity from any location is going to become much, much more important, along with just the general idea of business continuity. And I think the regulators will, although there's been some recognition from the regulators that this is a difficult period, there hasn't really been a relaxing of any of those regulatory rules. And if anything, I think the regulators will look back on this period and retrospectively test firms to see how good their processes were and how resilient they were kind of during this period. And I think one of the big things that the regulators will be looking for is that idea of business continuity and the ability to perform all functions remotely. And in our sort of space of compliance, the management of non-public information and possible insider trading detection, it's even more important that firms stay connected with their employees. They're not able to deliver those cultural and ethical cues in person, and they're not getting reinforced by the general population. And so it's really, really important that the compliance teams find ways of staying connected with their employees and mixing up those communications, from in-person meetings to emails to one-on-one sort of interactions to answering questions quickly. It all helps kind of keep reminding why compliance teams have those programs and how important they are, and the effect of having a potential slip up or kind of reputational issue.
And how you can be more creative, or how you strive to be more creative during an environment like this, right? I mean, we've had multiple clients say, I'm using STAR in new ways that I never thought of before, because now I'm in a situation where I don't have the one-on-one ability to go to somebody's desk and talk to them about a situation. I have to get more creative, and I have to use the technology in new ways to be able to continue to support that compliance program. And I think that's been interesting to me, is a number of clients who have said to us, we never thought of using STAR in XYZ way, but we are, and it's made it so much easier for us. And I think that's a pretty cool thing as well.
Yeah, I think we always knew that our compliance clients were multi-talented and versatile, but we've almost seen the inner marketeer kind of come to the fore, haven't we? And using the application to do campaigns and follow-ups and be really thoughtful about the types of communication that are being sent. And I hope that employees appreciate the level of support that compliance teams have been able to give them, because I do think compliance is changing from that kind of enforcer sort of policing to a much more business partner approach, where you're guiding businesses and individuals to take the right course of action under different situations, under potentially difficult circumstances. And so in a strange way, in many cases, the compliance is more accessible to employees, because everybody's on has got the same level of access to anybody else. So I hope that they can build on that. And I think the marketing and the communication of kind of policies and directions, and doing it in a kind of a sensitive and a thoughtful way, hopefully I think firms and compliance teams should be able to bring that forward and build on that idea kind of in the future, irrespective of where everybody continues to work.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think we were really pleased with the responses of the survey. And as I mentioned, I think if anything, it showed just how versatile and flexible and sort of innovative, compliance teams around the world were. So yeah, looking forward to the wider kind of TSAM event this year. It's more important than ever to sort of stay connected with each other and compare notes and see how everybody has fared this year and what their kind of plans are for the months and year ahead.
Great, Tim. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.